Bam. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Neurodiversity Gold podcast with me, Jude Morrow. I suppose at the top of the show, the one thing I have to plug first and foremost, because it's my podcast and I'll do what I like, is my new book, The Ghosts of Riots Past, is available now on Amazon. It's available. You can buy it, download it, read it. It's my experimental third album where it has nothing to do with autism whatsoever. It's a history of my local city from the point of view of the Knights of Malta First Aid Corps. It's a historical fiction novel. I loved researching it. I hope you love reading it. So I just thought I'd plug it because it's my podcast and we run it all ourselves. And all the episodes of the Neurodiversity Gold podcast are on our snazzy website, neurodiversitygoldpodcast.com. Our podcast is available in all major serious podcast places where you listen to your podcast when you're walking your dog, when you're doing other things that and give you the spare time basically to listen to my voice. So check all those out at the neurodiversitygoldpodcast.com website. And my guest today is one I've been excited to talk to for quite some time. Is the founder of Sensory Gated Art. And if there's one thing I'm a sucker for, it's art. I collect art. I love art. I really appreciate it. And I am thrilled beyond belief to welcome to the show Amanda Robert Hughes. How are you? Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here. You're such a delightful person and personality. I can tell already. I'm going to try to make sure that I don't turn this into a giggle fest because I'm just delighted to be here.
Be a giggle fest. We love giggle fests here, where we cry out for a giggle fest because yes, we love all our guests. Some of them have very, very emotional stories. So giggle fests are most welcome. And by the way, this we you do know that we're going to call this episode Giggle Fest.
Sure, whatever you want. Creative license is all yours.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're going to call it. So thank you for the title because that was one thing that I like to do actually in the middle of the show is to write the title because
Okay.
it's just like interview about art with Amanda, boring, Giggle Fest, much more interesting. Maybe that's the marketer side in me coming out. So I suppose the first question at the top of the episode, like I ask, to every guest, is what is your kind of ND journey, so to speak? I mean, what's your background?
Okay, so do you want the short, medium, or long version?
Long.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I'm originally from Saratoga Springs, New York. And that is a really historic town in New York that places a major emphasis in the fine arts, and they always have for hundreds of years. So the result of that is it's an important priority in our culture there, as well as even the public schools had tons of funding for the fine arts just in public schools. So you didn't have to have extra resources to be able to afford um, the exposure to the fine arts. So I was doing classical ballet, not through the public schools. That was on the side. I was doing classical ballet from a really young age. I eventually danced with the New York City Ballet 2 years in a row. I took guitar lessons, piano lessons. I did acting. I was, and throughout all of this time, my entire formative years, I was also immersed in the visual arts. And that was, uh, I was exposed to a lot of the mediums in public school. So by the time I graduated, I was actually able to major in art. That was something that was always natural for me was the visual arts. And it was only a matter of time before I found my very own niche. But there was one more key that I needed to unlock that, and that was my late autism diagnosis in my early 30s.
Like it's it's a sad thing that just keeps coming up. It's a theme in the podcast that autistic women and girls and pretty much anybody who's not a privileged white middle class male like me seems to get diagnosed much later. I mean, my sort of diagnosis came in 2001, whenever I was 11. So, what was your diagnostic journey like?
So, like most parents, our children end up becoming this mirror, this new realization of ourselves. We get to know ourselves on a whole new level after we have had children. And my son was diagnosed with autism. And it was at that point I had started to have this big picture kind of finally filling in, and I was diagnosed with autism as well. And so I realized then I'd been living my entire life as an undiagnosed autistic. And it was the best news for me. I was so happy because it helped me understand my past, myself. And like I said, that was the key, that last key that I needed to unlock what I uniquely could offer to the world through my art.
And I have to say, with your art, now I'm going to kind of circle back in the New York connection, where I'm going to do a very, very quick interjectory plug because it's concerns New York. Actually, I'm going to New York next week because I am headlining the New York City Autism Tech Innovation and Careers Expo, which is at the High School of Art and Design, which is on East 56th Street in Manhattan. So I'm going there next week. Why we didn't know about you earlier on, because I've been working really closely with Richard Schreiber, who is the founder and CEO of the New York City Autism Community Group.
Oh,
Because we have art going there and we have artists going there, and I really wish I had heard about you. You know what, actually, I'm actually meeting with Richard after the recording of this episode. I think we should, I will definitely chat to Richard because one thing, and I noticed this because I was looking through your art, and one thing that I really loved was your kind of triangular version of the Starry Night.
mm-hmm.
Because how I identified with it is look at the NTI logo and then look at that work. It's like it sort of looks like our logo a bit has the same sort of design features, which the original of the Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh, because everybody pronounces it wrong, is actually in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And I
Oh
saw it the
my,
last time I was there.
oh my goodness. That is awesome. Yeah, I mean, the clean lines in your logo, the Neurodiversity Training International, those clean lines, I was just giving a talk at my exhibit 2 days ago. Neurodivergent minds are really good at picking up on how soothing clean lines are because we
Yes.
do the sensory gating process consciously, and a lot of everybody else is doing it subconsciously, so they don't realize why something is soothing. They just know it is. But neurodivergent minds are like, that's soothing, we know it.
Yeah, and that's why our logo is the way it is.
I
The
love
the
it.
MTI logo, like the crisp, clean lines, because I'm going to let every listener of the show into a secret, look, right? Although we brand and market like MD related brands and individuals, we don't do our own branding because you can't look at your own brand objectively, right? Because let's say you and I had a discussion about our babies, right? Where Ethan's my baby and is the most beautiful baby in the world, and you're going to say your baby is the most beautiful baby in the world, and you can't do it objectively, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So that's
Yeah.
why I mean people have branded us, which was visual etiquette. I might as well give them a shout out while I'm here. But you know, whenever we do branding work for our clients, we are big fans of crisp, clean lines and text, like you know simplicity, very much a less is more uh
Yes.
type of theme, and I love that. I really do.
Absolutely.
Like, so with your artwork, do you exhibit?
So I was actually asked this by, and I'm not bragging, a reporter asked me this the other day. She's like, where do you exhibit it? I'm like, actually, most of my exposure has just been the online community. Like, that's where I have found my collectors. I mean, galleries are getting just inundated with artists all the time. So it's sure I've done the due diligence of, reaching out to galleries, but I never hear back. But I get it because they're just inundated. And I mean, I'm like, yeah, this is a new genre. So you would think that'd be a little bit more competitive, but I don't know. I have found my collectors and my community a lot online. So this exhibit that I have right now is my first official exhibit. I've had my art in places of business and have called that an exhibit, which it was. but this is in an official gallery. I'm at my first one right now.
Because I mean, with your art, and I would encourage everybody to look at it, and I'll give everybody the reference, which is Amanda Hebert Hughes, HEBERT, dash AmericanArtist.com. I would encourage everybody to go on and have a look because it's just so soothing to look at. It's so nice to look at. Now, with art, I do like art that's also garish to look at, where it's like, ugh, and I have some pieces that are quite garish to look at. I suppose it's like the sensory thing, because art, I mean, it's a sensory experience, isn't it?
Absolutely, for sure.
Like, I mean, what's the kind of the sensory experience of art? Like, I mean, what you're doing is sensory art. So, what is your inspiration for works?
My inspiration is that art allows me to create anything that I want. I can show everybody whatever I want to show them, something that they've never seen before.
Mhm.
And I like to deliver things that are soothing and comforting, but also very fascinating and enriching. And you would think that one day I sat down and say, I want to invent a new genre and let's see, how am I going to do that? It was just totally the other way around. I started painting a really unique, specific way. I just felt compelled. This is the way I was going to do it. And it doesn't matter if people connect with it or not. This is what I'm meant to be doing. This is how I'm meant to be doing it. And I had a really specific style from the start. And it was during that time that I got my autism diagnosis discovery and started my research. And when I finally came across a blog by Burnett Grant called Sensory Gating, I had my aha moment. I said, I'm doing the sensory gating process in visual art form. And so that was when I realized that's why I can't find art anywhere that's like exactly what I'm doing. It's a new genre. So I got to name it. And by the way, I did manage to get an easier website. If you go to sensorygatedart.com, it will send people to that website that you just named.
Ah, there we go. Right, because
Yes.
that's how I found it, and I mean it's absolutely beautiful. Like some of the the pieces on here. But do you know what I wanted to ask you about? Right, where as far as art, I like art that I like to look at. Right, because my reason for that is if in the future anything ever turns out to be fake, at least I'll still enjoy looking at it hanging
Mm-hmm.
up on my wall or wherever else. Or because I mean, with my house, it's kind of full of like pieces that art galleries either return or are not exhibiting anymore. Not because they're fake, it's just because I mean, galleries put on different exhibitions all the time.
Sure.
But there's one thing that kind of I don't really know about, and I know you do it, and they're beautiful to look at, is abstract art. Like, how would you explain abstract art to somebody who doesn't know anything about it?
I would summarize it as something that you've never seen before. You know, anytime you put any new piece of abstract art in front of somebody, they're looking at something that's never been done before, that they've never seen before. Obviously, compare what I mean is comparing that to realism. You know, if somebody paints a picture of a bird and you have another picture of a bird put in front of you, another picture, there's that repetition. There's that, okay, well, this is what I'm expecting to see.
Yeah.
Compared to abstract, you get to see something completely different and new.
Because I'm looking at your abstract pieces now, and there's a piece there that's titled Rainy Day, and it although it's not like a painting of a window or some people walking in the rain, it feels like a rainy day.
Yeah, it's sensory gated. What it does is I pull out the core components, the core components that signal the brain. It's autistic bluntness in visual art form.
because
because
I like bluntness. I like, because for me, I'm as subtle as a shotgun blast to the chest. I'm just not subtle one bit. But I've noticed that because with your abstract art, I get it. And I'm somebody that would look at abstract art and think, I don't really get this. Like, I went to the Museum of Modern Art in May, the last time I was in New York City, and there was a lot of stuff by Rothko, and I I don't really get I don't really get it. I know that it changes hands for tens of millions of dollars, but another abstract artist that I really got into, whenever I was there, I don't know if he's a New Yorker, he may not be, but his name's Clifford Still, and I got his abstract art where I was like, I really get this. And you're in a band of two artists whose abstract art that I get.
wow,
I
that's
don't really,
quite an
I don't
honor.
really, I don't really get it. I don't understand it normally because I don't know. Maybe it's too intelligent for me. Maybe it's just like with the way my brain wiring is. It's too cryptic. Where with me, you just need to come out and say it. But with yours, you do come out and say it, but it's
Yeah,
different.
it's logical. It's logical. It's also it's difficult with my art being seen online because the texture component of my art is so three-dimensional in person. And for lots of people who take in visual information as if through a microscope and they're more susceptible to visual overload, my art still, because of the texture blocks, has a section that they can really dive into without getting overwhelmed because the texture is something to explore, but it's all a solid color. So it doesn't give you two different components at the same time, like texture and color, different colors. You have one solid color in the texture. And even neurotypical people, when they get in front of my art, the first thing they say is, oh, I love the texture. It's just something subconsciously that people are drawn to because it's enriching.
And I'm not surprised because the way, just the way I judge art is if I get it, then it's good. If even I get it. Because there's a couple of things in life I just don't really get. Number one is most abstract art, and another thing is musical theater. I don't really get it. Where I've tried. I've
I'm not
tried my
laughing at
hardest.
you.
Like I've tried to get it, but I can't
Yeah.
really.
I mean, that's how I am with, oh, I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings. That's how I am with opera. But musical theater I can do. I can do musical theater. Like I love Les Mis, I love Phantom of the Opera. Um, but opera itself, I don't know if it's because the combination of it's in a foreign language and there's just some really intense notes going on constantly. I don't know, but to
Funny
each
enough,
his own.
opera I do get. I do get opera because you can get, even if you don't speak Italian or Latin or whatever an opera is in, by the tone of their voice and the actions of the people, you know what they're doing and you know how they feel. Where, I mean, with musical theater in some guises, it's like, I don't understand this. I don't get this at all. But what I wanted to ask you, I know you're going under the banner of sensory gated art. So, I mean, what do you do? Who do you serve?
Well, it's really it's an accessible and universal genre. So it's accessible because it caters to a lot of different minds, especially
Mhm.
obviously neurodivergent minds. It removes the visual overwhelm that can prevent a lot of people from actually looking at art. I know some autistic, brilliant professionals who don't like looking at things like Van Gogh's Starry Night because they see life in visual things. They take in visual information as if through a microscope, and it's just too much overwhelming information for them to take in. So it makes it more accessible to them because they're not getting this visual overwhelm, but they're also getting something that's fascinating to look at. They can enjoy it. But
Yeah.
it's also universally calming because everybody's brain, whether you're a neuromajority or neurodivergent, has to perform the sensory gating process. It's a cognitive process. And so the components that I use to create sensory gated art have calming effects because of the clean lines, like we mentioned. Those are soothing. There's no cognitive interpretation for the brain saying, where does one color end? Where does one color begin? Okay, now what have I got? The other part is that a lot of the lines are straight lines. The straight lines are predictable because they carry a steady direction. Predictable things are comforting. You're not bracing for the unexpected, all the subconscious stuff going on in the brain. The enriching textures, which I already mentioned. And then finally, the cohesive color palette. All of the colors are from the same palette. So the brain knows there's a logical relationship for them. So all these things are soothing because they just work for the brain. There's less work for the brain.
Yeah, there is an it's I think first and foremost that art should be visually pleasing as opposed to confusing.
Yeah,
If that makes sense. Like it's
absolutely.
because sometimes, with art, it can be very, very hard to get. Now, some people love that, where the way like some people like where's Waldo or where's Wally or in Germany where's Walter kind of puzzles where it is art, but you have a task, you have a mission to decipher it and look for the guy.
Right.
But although I like that to a degree, but it sometimes should just be pleasing and provoke a reaction without looking too deeply into it. That's why I'm especially drawn to the rainy day one, where it's like, I just love that. It's so simple because I love rainy days. Like
Me
whenever I
too.
go to sleep at night, I play rain noises to go to sleep and have done for quite some time, which can be bizarre, but it works for me. Rain makes me really happy. But my next question is, what are your plans for the future? What's your 2023 shaping up like?
I'm actually hungry for a really big challenge for 2023. The positive response that I get from people already regarding my art really compels me to be like, how can I get this in front of more people so that more people can benefit from it? Because that's the part of the reason why I'm like, let me share this with the world so that other people can benefit from it and enjoy it. And so I think that's definitely what my 2023 I'm hoping for.
Absolutely, because you know what? Like as far as people that even come in to work with us, like there's seldom anything that would know right away would be really simple. Like, and I would urge everybody to go on sensorygatedart.com and just look at the stuff because I mean pushing that out to the right people is going to be really easy.
Oh,
Especially because I mean, you would be shocked at the amount of people, and there will be people that will back me up on this. We have done some work before with an ND specific art exhibition, and people are looking to set them up, but not many people come forward. Where
mm-hmm.
I will tell you this, truly, you do have an opportunity and a really rather big one. So, the final question of this amazing episode of this Giggle Fest that we found ourselves in, how can people get in contact with
Oh, that's pretty easy. So if you go to my website, obviously sensorygatedart.com, there's a contact page. So you can email me. That's the fastest way to get a hold of me. I'm also active on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I love the community there. I've met so many awesome people, including you there.
you? Oh, thank you, Karen.
And of course, I'm active on Instagram and Facebook. People can follow me on those platforms. I have a YouTube channel. I'm trying to get more YouTube videos out, but the one I have out is pretty awesome. My producer in the UK, Quinn Dexter, helped me produce an awesome YouTube video on um, the making of a sensory gated artwork, Monet's Water Lilies. That's right on my YouTube page. So it's also on my homepage of my website. So it's easier to find there, sensorygatedart.com. Sorry, that was a long answer.
That's a perfectly acceptable long answer. And Amanda, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been absolutely fantastic, really informative for me personally. And I suppose a happy byproduct of that is that a lot of our listeners will love it as well. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in and listened. I mean, to talk to Amanda, please do connect on LinkedIn. connect in all the channels, check out the website sensorygatedart.com, and even to reach out, talk to us as well. We're at neurodiversity-training.com. You've all been brilliant. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week for another episode of the Neurodiversity Gold podcast.